Our top story is this hour. Grace Mugabe is still in South Africa. Police ministry says she has invoked her diplomatic immunity. Zimbabwe's First Lady is accused of assaulting a Johannesburg model. It's the ANC versus the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, challenging the outcomes of the 2015 Provincial Executive Committee. Some branches say proper processes were not followed in the elective conference and they want the results nullified. Thousands gather in Marikana to mark the 5th anniversary of the massacre. 5 years later, the families paid tribute to the 34 mine victims. AMCO calls for empowerment of black people. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, good evening to you. This is Africa News Network First Fast Live. My name is Cindy Mabi. The scene setter for the ANC's 2017 elective conference is playing out in court. Several KZN ANC branches launched a court bid that might change the political fortunes of Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma and Cyril Ramaphosa. The KZN ANC conference, which saw Sinhle Zikalala unseat Senzo Mchunu as provincial chairperson, is being contested in court. Several branches backing Mchunu allege that proper processes were not followed, which saw Zikalala emerge as the winner. Several branches of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal want the Pietermaritzburg High Court to nullify the outcome of the 2015 provincial conference. The branches argue that preparations for the 2015 provincial conference were flawed. The court heard how the results were allegedly announced before time and how the voters' roll allegedly went missing after the election. The verdict is expected to have an influence on who emerges as the next ANC leader in December.
It is true that the applicants were aware that the conference was final, but the issue was that they were not aware that their complaints flowing from the conference had been finally resolved. This case is not about the finality of the conference. Everybody accepts that the conference was finally held. This case is about the irregularities that happened after the conference. So the issue of the delay only applies insofar as the irregularities are concerned. It has no bearing on whether the conference was final or not.
First are the irregularities dealing with the termination of branch membership role. And we address under that topic two issues. First, what is referred to as the pre-audit stage of members of the branches in preparation for a conference. The case there being whether the branches were given access to the pre-audits before they were audited by the national, or were affirmed or confirmed by the conference.
The applicants aren't even members of the branches of which they complain, and none of them have been proved to have the authority of the branch executive committees, who are the ones who would be entitled to complain if there was in fact any valid complaint. And that would be by way of the appeal procedures which have been followed. And if the branch structures were unhappy with the result of those appeal findings, they could have taken them on review. Pre-processes have all gone through and the conference has gone ahead with the approval of everyone. And now 21 months later, 4 people say that they are entitled to set aside the conference.
And here are some of the points of contention in the case. Complainants allege the KZN conference was rescheduled without consulting branches, but the PEC says all preparations for the KZN conference were done by the book. It is alleged that an appeal on the branch audit outcomes was still pending at the time. However, the PEC says complainants did not raise any irregularities during the conference. Another allegation is that the National ANC office delayed interventions as requested by the KZN branches, but the Provincial Executive Committee says the plaintiffs were aware they had to launch an appeal within 180 days. Complainants allege the results were tweeted before the outcome was officially announced, but the PEC says there is no reason to doubt the results as the election was conducted by an independent agency.
Well, the proceedings so far are really nothing to worry about in our view, because the applicants are actually fighting a political case using technicalities. And the major question that they still need to respond to is that they are trying to draw a picture of illegitimate processes that led to an illegitimate conference. But the question that they must answer is why they participated in all these processes, which now they claim are illegitimate, up until the last day of the conference. Then you complain after that.
It's a very important day. You know that the matter about this case has been hanging for a very long time. Of course, as a provincial executive committee, it is not something that we're proud of. And I'm sure that our own view on this matter is shared by the majority of branches of the ANC. What we believe in is that the ANC must always have the capacity to resolve its own challenges internally in a manner that reinforces the confidence of our people in the leadership role of the African National Congress and the ability of the organization to be sensitive to difficulties confronting the organization from time to time.
The KZN ANC court battle raises the following key questions. One, can internal organizational problems be solved through the courts, and is the application an attempt to influence the ANC succession race? And can the KZN root out factionalism before the ANC elective conference in December?
It is unfortunate that NEC members, instead of calling comrades together and say, "Sizwathiwa kune court case, where comrade bani akesihlale phansi." ANC NEC members will go to comrades and say, "Hambani niye court. Uma thina sifeyila ukunilida hambani niye court." Issues of the ANC will never be solved by the court.
Immediately after the court proceedings, both factions came out to address the members who came out in numbers to support them. The arguments will continue again tomorrow here at the Pietermaritzburg court. For ANN7, I'm Patti Sampuya in Pietermaritzburg.
Spusiso Ndlovu, a political analyst, joins us on the line. Tsepo Khadima, political analyst, is in studio. Dumiseni Ntuli is KwaZulu-Natal ANC provincial spokesperson. Good evening to our panelists, and thanks so much for joining us. Tsepo, is this an indication of, the processes of unifying the ANC failing almost at any given opportunity?
I think it's just indicative of what you should expect leading to an elective conference. Because the position of president of the ANC is certainly an exceedingly important one. So it shouldn't surprise us at all. Should the aggrieved parties within the African National Congress approach the courts in the event that they can't, find relief as they would so wish within the ANC, certainly I think the Constitution of the Republic makes that provision and binds all organs of the country towards ensuring that the Constitution of the Republic is the supreme law of the land, and any conduct or law that is not consistent with the Constitution is of course invalid. So it would include, in the event that an organization or a political party such as the ANC, if there is anything that perhaps is not consistent with the Constitution of the Republic, it will therefore be invalid. But if one looks at the case before the High Court in Pietermaritzburg right now as it stands, from what I'm seeing here, I think that the applicants in this case that are the aggrieved parties, they perhaps may be trying to write a South African version of the Mission Impossible movie. I just don't see how, because they have not, for example, alleged that there has been an infringement upon a particular right which they would hold that is constitutional, and that they've been impeded from being able to exercise. If anything, it's common cause that they did participate in the conference that they are now saying that it is disputed. And the issue of a tweet that was in line with what the outcome results was, I just cannot see how anybody who understands how the ANC functions, particularly when it comes to elective conferences at provincial, regional, or even nationally, if one understands that, I can't see how anybody could take issue with the fact that the results of what was announced in the tweet was, for example, by November this year, Cindy, we will have a pretty good idea as to who is going to be president a month before the elections, for one simple reason, because the branches that would have met and collaborated, as well as the zones, the regions, and the provinces, once they collect those results, it gives you an indication. So it can't be a big issue that the results were treated and are exactly as to what the outcome of the elective process was. So I think what they're trying to do politics, but politics that, depending on the faction that has gone to court, that has taken ANC to court, that faction, if it supports any of the presidential candidates, they are going to cost that presidential candidate votes because they effectively taken a matter that should never have been before the courts to court.
Yeah, but let's get a sense from Mr. Dumiseni Nduli, KZN ANC spokesperson, why the applicants would even after consulting with their legal team, see the need that their case is winnable in court. In your view, is the ANC confident that this is a technical matter that should have been dealt with internally?
Well, thank you very much. I think the first thing that we have to acknowledge is that this is the year of the National Conference of the ANC, and comrades who did not succeed in the provincial conference in November 2015 have seen the current environment leading to the 54th National Conference as an opportunity for them to garner a support in the province so that they can be considered for election in the National Conference. The case is not necessarily about a determination to set aside the provincial conference in November in our own analysis. It's about sustaining a particular discord and a particular level of discontent among certain members of the ANC so that can be used as a basis upon which to launch what could be an alternative view leading to the National Conference of the ANC. But the only way you could have done that, because it's not very easy to break rank in KZN and have a leadership or have a position of the province that probably will divide us into two groups. It's usually happened that once the province takes a position on how we must approach matters of the National Conference, we become united behind that view. But to keep us in court in this way is, of course, to play with the emotions of our comrades. The intention is also to impact on the 10 regional conferences that we are going to be convening before the National 54th National Conference. So the desire is that you must have something happening which is going to make it very difficult for KZN, which is the biggest province of the ANC, to be united so that those who have ambitions to be elected, who were defeated in 2015, can then use that as a vehicle for them to market themselves.
Yeah, I mean, we're testing the not only legality, as you were saying, if their own right within the constitution of the party were infringed on not to participate in the elective conference of 2015, then it would have been a case to be argued, say, from a constitutional level. But in this case, they're complaining about President Jacob Zuma and the ANC NEC at the time failing to deal with the grievances that the faction in KwaZulu, or the group in KwaZulu-Natal, had in the November 2015 provincial elective conference. So from a point or legal point of view, how do you even substantiate those kind of claims if there are internal structures within the party that could have ventilated this matter?
My reading is in terms of what was argued by the counsel for the applicants or the complainants in this case. Certainly they were putting before court a lot of hearsay evidence. They didn't adduce any evidence of the correspondence that they had with President Zuma, but more so in terms of, even if they did have formal correspondence with President Zuma as president of the ANC, in terms of constitutionally, where is that provided for? One would think that, I mean, members of the ANC would understand and appreciate fully what are the due processes in event of any disputes, and as they believe that there is a dispute in terms of the manner in which the conference was run, but also in terms of the outcome. So they, in fact, never even formally went before within the mechanisms provided for within the ANC to go and lodge an appeal, which then could have gone to court on review in the event that they still did not find satisfactory relief to what they believed was infringed upon. And I think by and large, already you can see that their case is a very difficult one. And it would appear that what the KZN, the current leadership of ANC, PEC in KZN is adducing is certainly perhaps maybe the more, how can I say, the correct version, because they're questioning that the outcome of the process, they appreciate that, yes, they did participate in the process, but they are unhappy with the result. and what they are trying to come to an end in terms of what really makes them to be unhappy with the result, they don't seem to have argued anything substantive before court. So I would be very surprised, astonished actually, if the court can agree with them to nullify that conference, as there hasn't been any substantive evidence to allege that the irregularities that, or rather to support the alleged irregularities which they are speaking about. More so, to date, they're not even alleging that they are being denied the right to participate in the normal ANC processes. And can this actually have an impact on the conference in December? My own assessment is that very minimal, because the branches by themselves, those that are in good standing, will be participating at the national conference as branches and not as the provincial leadership. So even in the unlikely event that they were to have their way in court, you can expect that there will be a lot of, what can I say, appeals, and those appeals certainly will go beyond the December national conference. So the only thing that I'm seeing is that it can only have a negative impact on who this faction, which it would appear is supported by the former chair, Senzo Mkhunu, that therefore the one that Senzo Mkhunu is supporting, and we understand that he's supporting Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa to assent, it can only have a negative impact on the Deputy President's campaign rather than enhance it, because certainly they have not been able to come before court with substantive proof of the irregularities they are alleging.
Yeah, Mr. Ntuli, just in terms of the, media reports, they're now referred to as the so-called ANC rebels, who argue that this elective conference should not have taken place because of procedural irregularities. In your view, could the party have handled this matter or mediated before it even went to court?
Look, in our own view, you see, the process is leading to the provincial conference, and at the provincial conference and beyond that, were handled directly by the National Executive Committee of the ANC. And in our own view, all that was necessary and humanly possible within our own constitution and the tradition of the movement were adhered to in terms of dealing with that issue. Of course, there were several attempts after the provincial conference to reach out to comrades, firstly, who were marching every day to the provincial office of the ANC, to say to them, it's important that we must close the chapter of the provincial conference and find a formula to unite the organization. In the time, during the first 2-3 months after that, when the matter was being handled by the MEC of the ANC, there was a sense that we were beginning to have a consensus about how we must move forward. But ultimately, and as I said before, because this is a political question, it's not a technical legal matter, it's a political agenda which is intended to keep us busy with the court case so that we defocus the ANC leadership in the province from the task that is supposed to be executing. These comrades persisted and decided that they were going to go to court. There were attempts to engage with them to say that, look, you are going to be tarnishing the image of the ANC, and you would weaken the people's confidence into the African National Congress. But they decided that no, they want to go ahead and go to court, despite the fact that this thing has happened almost 2 years ago. It is because it's a political issue that needs to be followed up. You see, let me give you an example as my closing point on this. That, you see, if this matter were to be dragged beyond the national conference, depending on what becomes the outcome of the national conference, these people who are complaining will disappear. If they did not succeed to get their preferred leader to be elected in December, they would lose energy and the courage to pursue this case beyond December next year.
Yeah, Mr. Ntuli, just stay on the line, please. Rekhadima, it just shows in terms of reining in members, especially where there is a democratic environment where you can express your dissatisfaction with decisions or even the leadership for that matter. We know that the elective conference then resulted in a reshuffle that was mired under wraps in a veil of secrecy. We weren't sure what's going on until it was announced. That in itself creates that conflict, or rather unease as to what's going on within the party. Do you think it's an issue of discipline, ill discipline, or illegitimate expectation of retaining a position or even being deployed?
Look, I think one of the things that the African National Congress has to deal with is somewhat what would appear to be a belief that some leaders have a birthright, to being a position of leader X or leader Y within the ANC. And that's something that they need to deal with. So, for example, they speak about deployment, but I think the incumbents don't believe in being deployed. They believe that once they are in position, it is a birthright, and I think it's something that they need to deal with. And constitutionally, in terms of really how they enhance the issues of discipline and what to do when there are acts of ill discipline, I think that is a key thing. It's one thing to put in your constitution as a governing document the rules of conduct. It's another that when there is transgression of those rules, what actually you do. We've seen that recently now, that the ANC doesn't know what to do with those that have transgressed or rather have been disobedient to the rules that have been put in place in Parliament. So certainly I think the ANC is in a difficult area. Come December, that's what they need to do. But I think what we'll see at the end of the day, the ANC is still a learning organization as far as it being in government. The reshuffle that happened, and with the removal of Senzo Mchunu as the premier following his loss to that conference there, is one of those learning things. There's no perfect formula yet, and I think it's a trial and error. But going forward, will they do it? If we see last week Tuesday's events, if anything for me, meant that it's going to be ultra difficult going forward to actually willy-nilly saying I'm recalling leaders and I'm doing a reshuffle, because the end of it is this: with things being done in secrecy, as we have seen last week Tuesday, then how do you ensure that there is no bribery and corruption, as there has been allegations? So it would mean that positions can be bought, and those are state positions. So from national to local government, I think those are the serious things. If anything, I doubt that going forward we will see that the reshuffle as it happened following this decision in KZN, the PEC, with Senzo Mchunu losing out. And how does the ANC balance that with the party being the center of power, and therefore it being preferable that the president be the one who's at the union building if they're in government, and the chair of the province being the premier? Of course, there are instances whereby the chairs are not premiers, and it creates two centers of power. So if anything, come 2017 National Conference, 2018 to 2019, you are definitely going to have two centers of power. I can't see how they will then be able to have the capacity to recall President Zuma. I think he's there to stay, because if they try to remove him, then money politics are going to take over, and they will have a president that has been bought.
We'll get a response from Mr. Nduli. Sibusisa Ndlovu, political analyst, joins us on the phone lines. Mr. Ndlovu, thanks so much for your time. Do you think the floodgates are open now? With we've seen disenchantment with ANC members either publicly speaking out in criticism of the leadership of the party in general, and now even going to the courts in litigation?
Listen, for me, no, thank you very much for having me online. Listen, for me, the principle here is not the matter of the members of the ANC being satisfied with the matter, but the issue here is whether now the legal remedies which are sought through the court actions are the right channels to use. Now, we had the members of the ANC who are disgruntled, who went to court currently, saying that it was the right option to do because they launched the internal processes within the party that were not listened to. But the matter of argument here is these members, there were members in the conference, they took part in that conference, they never objected in that conference. So the argument it should be they should have objected because they were given a chance on the floor to object around this matter. I read today on their defense attorney, Tembekile and Ngugai Tombi, when he was saying to exhaust the legal remedies within the party internal structures, it was the right way to do. So now they have seen that the ANC couldn't listen to them. That is why now the applicants sought they live to appeal in the court against the decision on the matter. But one can ask then the logic and the timing, because for me the timing is wrong. Why suddenly now the issue is being raised
when there is a conference around in December. So this is a calculating political move to try to win the political score. And for me, the argument is also cheap, because Senzo Mkhune was the part of the organizer of that conference prior to the organizing of that conference. Now, they are saying they raised the matter of law. The point of law that they are raising is that the results were announced even before it can be officially announced. So my argument here is that one now is censored to write something on Twitter according to his own views that the outcome will be this, because individual people, yes, they can presume that the outcome will be this. Does that give them the right to say now results were announced? No, the results were not announced, but only certain members were just tweeting around to say the results will be like this.
Yeah. All right, Tesbusiso Ndlovu, thank you so much, political analyst. Just in wrapping up, Mdumiseni Ntuli, in the disgruntled members or the so-called ANC rebels in KwaZulu-Natal raising their objection with regards to the elective conference 2019 in the province, you think by participating in the process they legitimize it and therefore their case won't hold water?
Well, definitely. You see, what is clear here is that if the outcome of the provincial conference was in their favor, I'm quite certain that nobody would have taken an initiative on their part to go to the extent of ending into the court of law, challenging the legitimacy of the process through which they've benefited. What we are seeing here is comrades who cannot accept the democratic processes of the ANC, who cannot accept that the National Executive Committee, as a supreme body between conferences, sanctioned that conference, presided over it, attended to all disputes related to them, to the conference, and resolved them in accordance with the prescript of our own rules and the Constitution. Now, it's a political case. You will see, as I say, this case is probably going to last a bit longer, depending on the outcome and whether, in terms of the legal merits, whoever is unhappy with the conclusion takes the matter to an appeal or what happens. But I can assure you, if it were to be delayed up until December, I am very sure that depending on the outcome of the ANC National Conference in December, the case will become a matter of history come the 1st of January 2018.
All right, Mdumiseni Ntuli, but why waste this time? Is it just about being opportunistic, political expediency, just to frustrate the political or elective race to the conference in December?
Well, I mean, look, I think there are various objectives that are being tried to be achieved by various parties. But for me, this is good for jurisprudence in our country, and we should not actually frown upon it. We should welcome it, because once and for all, the matters can be set. But if anything, maybe perhaps Tom Cruise's next political thriller is going to be in South Africa following this case.
And with that, I don't even want to know who will be in the starring role. But thanks so much, Tsepo Khadima, political analyst, and Spusiso Ndlovu, also political analyst, Mdumiseni Ntuli, KZN ANC spokesperson. And you at home, thanks indeed for watching. We're back after this.